The night my wife leaned over at a baby shower, whispered, "I'll only be a minute," and never came back. That was the night something in me snapped. Not because of Dana's polished grin, or the perfect pastel setup, or the polite lies floating on champagne bubbles, but because I already knew. I'd seen the lab work. I'd traced the fake nursery photos. And worst cut of all, I knew she'd pulled Victor Langley, the man who once called me brother, into the cover-up. I stood there with her coat over my arm while they laughed just one glass wall away. Right then, heart still beating, hand still steady, I made a decision. Every mask, every secret, every piece of them was about to shatter. No shouting, no scene. I simply looked at my wife, really looked, and saw the stranger she'd become. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your voices turn these stories into a coast-to-coast campfire. And if drama spiked with karma is your thing, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss the next twist. Comfortable? Drink in hand? Good. It started with a lie dressed in lavender and brute. Picture a late spring sunset over Capitol Hill. Skyline Conservatory's rooftop buzzing with Seattle's glossy crowd. Dana stood beside me in a pale rose sheath she'd obsessed over for days, laughing too loud with her hand on Victor's sleevey ex-best friend, her current confidant. At the center, Elise Chandler, the supposed mama-to-be, cradled a moon-smooth belly like it held truth. It didn't. 2 months ago, Dana left her tablet unlocked. I'd scrolled. Blood panels, negative. OB notes from Dr. Samuel Ortiz. No prenatal markers. A prescription for mild antidepressants. Not normal for someone claiming she was 9 weeks from due date, especially after registering for 15 grand in couture crib gear. I kept that knowledge sealed like a fault line waiting. Tonight, the tension surfaced. Victor raised his glass. Dana leaned in, too close, too rehearsed. His toast, to the families we choose. Not just the ones we're born with. Laughter flared. I didn't join. I pulled Dana aside by the macaron tower. She gave me the look detached, a touch superior. "You're paranoid, Martin." "This is Elise's day." Smile for the phones, voice flat behind it. "We need to leave." Head tilt, the gesture that once hooked me. "You're not starting drama, are you?" I should've. Instead, I let her drift back to Victor as the photographer snapped perfect skyline shots. I stood there, a ghost with an untouched Prosecco. The con wasn't just Elise's, it never was. Driving home, silence filled the SUV. Dana scrolled Instagram while I gripped the wheel. I tried one last time. "Dana, I know Elise isn't pregnant, and I can prove it," I finished. Dana's laugh was brittle. "You don't know a thing." I saw the lab file. Her eyes flicked, panic flaring. "You hacked my tablet?" 7 weeks ago. I waited, hoping I was wrong. She turned to the window pane, sluicing down the glass, then spoke too quickly. "Elise miscarried. She's fragile, Martin. She's wearing a foam belly." Lightning silence. Something crossed Dana's face, fear, guilt, maybe just indifference. "She's your oldest friend," she tried. "And Victor?" I asked. "What is he to you now?" No answer. I held her stare until she looked away. The drive home froze at 30 miles an hour. That night, I took the guest room for the first time since our son Evan left for UW. Lucky kid safe at college, far from this fallout. While Dana scrolled TikTok, I scrolled history. Midnight texts, "Still dreaming of your hands, Victor." No caution, no shame. I didn't confront her. I documented like any architect who's lost pride but not precision. I visited the florist who staged Elise's shower. Cash payments only, red flag. Dr. Samuel Ortiz, me OB/GYN contact, confirmed no prenatal chart under Elise's insurance. I photographed untouched baby clothes, tags dangling in that showroom nursery, cross-checked Marina's Instagram posts against GPS metadata. Patterns emerged, lies repeat themselves. The clincher came 3 days later. I returned from a Chicago site visit. Victor's obnoxiously rare cologne ghosted the hallway outside the master suite. Using my bed was their new hobby. That night, lights out, I stood in the living room while Dana brushed her hair. "You've been sleeping with him." She froze then, too fast. Number. Silence. One night, she whispered. In our bed. We're done. Her face crumpled. Martin, please. But I was already walking away, betrayal quiet as drywall rot. On the sidewalk beneath a flickering street lamp, I realized anger had burned off. Only strategy remained. Time to reclaim my name and expose theirs. Morning. Dana hummed in the shower, lavender steam curling under the door. Same curated normal. I lay still, replaying last night's reel. Elise's fake nursery. Victor handing me champagne with, to fatherhood, dripping like syrup. I waited. Dana emerged in that coral silk dress I once loved. Hair twisted soft, disarming. Elise asked me to drop off a gift card, she said, slipping on heels. Which charity was that? My voice stayed even. A blink, barely perceptible. Hope after loss support for bereaved mothers. Nice of her, I said, rising from the bed. Mind if I tag along? She hesitated, clutch tightening. Why? Because, I answered, stepping into the hallway. It's time, someone. I stared at Dr. Ortiz's text. Pulled her chart again, still no pregnancy, no prenatal visits. Something's off, Martin. I watched the words blink on my screen, then deleted them. Dana breezed in, fastening heels, eyes skimming me like a scanner. Everything okay? Fine. I lied, pouring coffee. Might swing by Julian's site. Restoration permits almost done. Tell him hi. She kissed my cheek habit, guilt or both, and left. The door hadn't clicked shut before I grabbed keys and pointed the Volvo toward Queen Anne. Elise and Graham's penthouse doorman waved me through. Mr. Hale was familiar at the charity parties. Elevator ride up felt like being lowered into ice water. Inside, the condo was model home perfect, too perfect. In the nursery, untouched couture onesies hung like retail props. One new item, a handwritten letter on the dresser. Dear little one, pages of future promises to a child who never existed. I photographed it, folded it, slid it into my jacket. 40 minutes later, Dana's Tesla pulled up, tote bag swinging, smile dialed too bright. She went in, emerged 15 minutes later, ghost white, climbed back into her car without a selfie or a text. I tailed her to Green Lake. She parked, stared at water an hour, then made a call I didn't need to overhear. That night we lay in bed, silence thick as foam insulation. Finally, she spoke. I found a journal. I waited. Elise keeps letters to the daughter she lost. Dates are months before she announced this pregnancy. So she's not pregnant, I said. Dana's whisper. Number. The room seemed to shrink. Dana continued, voice cracking. She used the story to raise money for her nonprofit. Promised donors she'd name the baby after their lost children. Even with my evidence, the cruelty punched hard. Why didn't you say this yesterday? I wasn't sure. You were protecting her. I crossed to the window. Seattle glittered like a beautiful lie. I have something else to tell you. About you and Graham. Dana flinched. I know, I said. Weeks now. Tears welled. It was stupid. A mistake. Not now. I kept my tone surgical. Listen carefully. You'll copy that journal and deliver it to Ruth Whitman. Dana's head snapped up. Ruth, she's still grieving her son. That's why. She was exploited. Give Ruth the match. She'll burn the fraud to the ground. Dana's lip quivered. You're asking me to betray Elise. No, I said. I'm asking you to stop betraying. She betrayed herself and you helped her. I kept my voice level. Dana didn't argue. Next dawn, I woke to the door clicking shut. She was already gone. By late afternoon, Ruth Whitman had posted a cryptic tweet. What kind of person promises to name a baby after your dead child and never carried one? It went viral before dinner. By midnight, number shower scam and grief for profit were trending. Elise's nonprofit page locked, comments exploding. Dana lay beside me scrolling, phone buzzing nonstop. I didn't touch her, didn't leave either. I needed to see how far she'd spin once honesty failed. When her breathing slipped into sleep, I opened her phony no passcode, just routine, and skimmed the archived thread with Graham Thorne. Photos, dirty jokes, timestamps that matched my business trips. I set the phone back, stared at the ceiling. The unraveling had begun. They had no idea how far I was willing to pull. 3 nights later, the downtown gallery glowed under soft jazz. Social gravity bent toward Dana, standing with Victor beneath a minimalist marble piece, white wine in hand, fingers resting on his lapel like it belonged to her. Watching from the far wall, I caught my project partner Caleb Myers' eye. He nodded once he'd noticed too. Dana reintroduced herself as executive partner at Hale Langley, a title built on my sweat but now flaunted like heritage. The murmurs around her weren't merely polite, they were approving. Martin. The low voice belonged to Lydia Fang, real estate rainmaker from the 88th floor. Missed you at the quarterly summit. Didn't get an invite, I said, sipping bourbon. Dana said you were in Indonesia. She studied my face, then added quietly, some of us notice when the foundation shifts. She melted back into the silver crowd. 3 days later, Evan texted, forgot cleats, practice in an hour. At Mom's the West End loft now, bearing Victor's name on the mailbox felt suffocating. Evan grabbed his shoes and sprinted out. From the hall, I heard Dana's hiss. If he finds out about the filing, Victor's baritone cut in. He'll cave. He always does. Martin doesn't burn things. Filing. Breath tight, I eased back down the stairs. That night, the public docket confirmed it. Revised custody petition and asset. Restructure suit. Both filed through Victor's firm last week. She'd said nothing. I phoned Caleb. It's starting. I wondered how long she'd wait. He insisted we meet uptown. Caleb arrived with Sebastian Trent, a reputation analyst, pricey, predatory. You're not fighting Dana, Sebastian said, sliding a manila envelope over. You're fighting the version of you she's already selling. Inside, photos Dana and Victor signing papers, whispering with board members, touring my penthouse with potential buyers. How long? I asked. Since she named me CTO, Caleb replied. 2 months. Board never called you. Saturday at Evan's game, Dana appeared in a full-length coat, designer heels. Victor trailed 10 steps behind. Evan glanced from them to me. I forced a steady nod. After the whistle, Dana approached, smile taut. Martin, we should talk. Evan's watching, I said. We can't avoid this. You moved to change medical proxy. Tried repositioning the firm. What exactly am I avoiding? Color climbed her cheeks. Victor edged forward. Martin, this is a family matter. It's a legal matter now, I told Victor, eyes flat. Hope you argue better in court than you do when Dana snaps her fingers. That evening, Evan sat beside me, fiddling with the sleeve of his hoodie. Do you hate Mom? I studied him. Number, I just don't trust her anymore. She says you want to take me away. Do you feel like that? He shook his head, voice small. I just missed before. Nothing else to a truth hadn't yet been weaponized when he was 10. 2 days later, Lydia Fang texted, check the firm's new website. Carter Ellison had been rebadged Hale. Langley Collective. Dana listed as managing partner. Victor as strategic counsel. My name? Erased. That night, I stood in my studio drafts covering every wall. My late father's T-square still in its drawer. They'd stripped everything but my capacity to rebuild. Precision would be my revenge. The next morning, a former intern at a Bay Area PR boutique met me in a Pike Place cafe. Dana's whisper, campaign says you had a breakdown, were removed for health reasons. Clients are starting to believe it. So the stakes had shifted from humiliation to professional extinction. I took the elevator to the 37th floor of Montgomery and hired Avery Trask, the litigator Dana once bragged about using. I want every project I didn't authorize flagged, metadata pulled, forensics audit top to bottom. If there's IP theft, we show daylight. Avery simply said, bring me the paper trail. 3 sleepless nights later, I had it. Timestamps, version histories, proposal drafts lifted wholesale Seattle Tech Pavilion, Menlo Park R&D campus, even Thorn Technologies glass brick concept. Enough to file, yet I waited. I booked a meeting with Thorn's VP, pitched a minimalist biophilic pavilion Dana could never have designed. He signed within a week. That's when Dana showed up at my new warehouse office, exposed concrete, hanging greenery, wholly mine. Victor loomed behind her. "You're making this personal," she snapped. "You forged my name and told the board I'd cracked." "That isn't strategy. Denate's theft." Her glare faltered. Victor shifted, uncomfortable. "You're attacking our credibility. You buried mine." I kept my tone even. "I'm simply exhuming it." They left without another word. That night, an anonymous envelope slid under my door. Dana forwarding my latest sketches to a private Gmail. Timestamped. Caleb, probably. 2 days later, I met him beneath gray skies of the Pier 66 overlooked neutral ground. "I know you sent it," I said. He didn't deny it. "She was supposed to stop after you left. She didn't. Then help me finish this." "I can't." "You already did. You handed me the bullet. I'll handle the trigger." Caleb looked away, guilt eroding his composure, but he didn't refute a thing as I turned back toward the city. I still intended to reclaim in my terms, with evidence stacked and a blueprint that I caught the war in Caleb's eyes. Friendship, guilt, loyalty splintering. I left him to choose his side. Monday, Avery filed the cease and desist. Within hours, Hale, Langley's lawyers, threatened countersuit, but Thorne quietly released our new pavilion rendering stamped Martin Hale's studio. Architects Weekly ran, Legacy reclaimed, Hale's second act. My inbox flooded. Dana's too. By Friday, my old assistant sent Slack screenshot Spanic pings, rumor threads, a firm realizing its emperor wore stolen clothes. That night, I stood in my warehouse studio, drafts lining raw brick walls, my father's drafting set untouched in its drawer. They'd stolen everything but the one asset they couldn't touch: my capacity to build again. This fight would be precision, not rage. The next morning, the former intern met me in Pike Place. "Dana's spin machine says you had a breakdown." Clients believe her. So reputational murder, good to know. 2 hours later, I retained Avery Trask, Dana's old litigator. "Audit every server, trace every render she lifted," I said. Avery nodded. "Let's bag them." 3 sleepless nights yielded evidence. Metadata proving Dana pilfered Menlo Park composites, Seattle Tech Pavilion plans, even Thorne's glass brick concept. Clients were being pitched my work under her byline. I didn't sue yet. Instead, I pitched Thorne's VP a biophilic pavilion Dana couldn't fake. He signed within a week. Dana and Victor stormed into my studio steel beams, hanging plants, mine alone. "You're making this personal," she snapped. "You forged my name and called me unfit," I replied. "That's not strategy, it's theft." Victor shifted, uncomfortable. "You're wrecking our credibility," she insisted. "You did that when you buried mine." 2 days later, I walked uninvited into Hale, Langley's boardroom. 5 minutes, that's all I'd asked. Wearing black and carrying nothing but a folder, I laid out timestamps, forwarded emails, private inbox theft. Dana tried to interrupt. I shut her down with her own metadata on screen. Silence told me enough. The board wouldn't protect her anymore. The next morning, clients resurfaced. Saw the articlets talk. Within 48 hours, 6 contracts ghosted Hale Langley and landed in my calendar. Vindication, not scandal, attached to my name again. But Dana wasn't finished. 3 nights later, a manila envelope waited under my door. Grainy terrace photos, Caleb kissing Donatum stamped, 6 months before I was pushed out. Betrayal's timeline stretched further back than I'd guessed. I called Caleb voicemail. Dana straight to silent. Fine. Silence isn't surrender. I slid the photos into Avery's growing dossier and drove downtown. More evidence, more leverage. The architecture of consequences was almost complete. And the final beam. The next morning, I walked into Avery's office and dropped a new set of documents on her desk. "Add breach of intellectual property for the Thorne and Municipal Tech designs," I said, "and prepare defamation filings. It's time." Avery didn't flinch. "We'll serve them together: civil complaint, press statement, and media notice queued for same-day drop." "They'll push back," I said. "They always do. If Julian flips, they'll scramble." Avery met my gaze. He's not built to withstand heat. If he cracks, we finish this fast. I didn't respond. He would crack. Outside the legal trenches, a quiet shift was already underway. A freelancer at Bayin started threading connections, SEC filings, project registries, internal awards, turning a spotlight back on my name. Work I'd long stopped hoping to be acknowledged for was finally surfacing again. Authorship credits corrected. Timeline distortions exposed. Turns out the public doesn't forget. It just waits for the right receipts. Then, something unexpected arrived. A letter. Handwritten. Simple block print. No return address. You always cared more about the work than the spotlight. Fallon feared that. Victor envied it. I'm sorry, I didn't see it sooner. No signature, but I didn't need one. The cadence gave it away. Julian. Guilt. Finally speaking in ink. That night, I got the call. The Civic Commission had approved my latest proposal. A redesign for the San Francisco Cultural Center: sustainable wood, breezeways, accessible terraces, and native plants to soften the urban grid. Not flashy, not trendy, just meaningful. And this time, the signature at the bottom of the pitch was mine. Mine alone. I visited the new site at dusk. It was still skeletal beams, dust, exposed conduit, but the bones were good. I laid my palm against the fresh-cut timber of what would soon become the main stairwell. It felt warm, honest, anchored. This wasn't revenge. This was recovery. And this was who I'd always been beneath the bruises they gave me. Back home, I sat on my rooftop deck as fog crept down from Twin Peaks. I didn't turn on music. I didn't pour a drink. I just watched the city breathe beneath me and let the stillness be the answer I needed. No grand speeches, no final declarations. They had collapsed under the weight of their own lies. All I had to do was build. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. My body stayed still, but my mind, it kept racing. Faces looped through my head like echoes down a hallway. Victor's tight jaw in the condo when I told him I knew. Dana's fake calm, fraying as she realized her grip was gone. Marina Cross blinking hard, trying not to cry when I said the word fraud. For years, I'd made my peace with quiet success, quiet disappointment, quiet betrayal. But this wasn't about peace anymore. This was about truth. And truth, when it finally shows up, is never quiet. By morning, my inbox was a war zone. Dana's legal team sent a cease and desist for client interference. Victor's people issued a statement calling my board appearance erratic. They weren't confident. They were flailing. And panic smells a lot like gasoline. All I needed now was the match. It came at 10:04 a.m. A zip file, sent anonymously to Avery's firm. No subject line, no explanation, just fire. Meeting transcripts, internal emails, voicemail files. Proof that Fallon had used my namey digital signature on the Monterey project proposal without my consent. Victor had helped forge the timestamp. The firm's internal ethics committee had flagged it. Fallon had buried the report. I compiled the evidence and sent it straight to the State Architecture Board and the San Francisco Licensing Authority. One line in the email. You'll want this before your next license audit. A few hours later, I met Julian. We picked a jazz cafe in the Tenderloin. Low ceilings, no cameras. Anonymity tucked into every corner. He slid a flash drive across the table. It's the Thorntech call, he said quietly. After they stole your design, Fallon promised them insider access and post-bid contracts once you were out. I stared at him. Why now? He didn't answer right away. Because I thought she'd stop, he said finally. Once you were gone. But she didn't. She just got hungrier. And now? He exhaled. Now I know the difference between loyalty and complicity. I didn't thank him. He didn't ask me to. That afternoon, I stood in the window of my new office, watching the fog roll over the bay and dialed Thorn Technologies' legal team. It was time. I think you'll want to revisit the licensing disclosures on the Green Tech headquarters pitch, I said, voice steady but pointed. There's documentation proving your internal team was misled, and if Carter Ellison sues you for breach, I'm willing to testify. The Thorn Technologies General Counsel went silent for a beat. Can you send me what you have? I already did. 10 minutes later, I had a revised contract in my inbox. This time, it was addressed to my firm. Only my firm. Carter Ellison's name had vanished entirely. That was the first domino. The second came 3 days later. A formal audit notice from the State Board of Architecture. Fallon and Victor were now under official investigation. The board would review licensing renewals, employment records, and if necessary, recommend revocation. I didn't smile. Not yet. The pain was still there. The betrayal hadn't dulled, just settled like wet concrete in my chest. Heavy, permanent, but somewhere in the cracks, light had started to seep in. On a rainy Thursday, a text buzzed onto my phone. Celestine Cross. Can we talk? I'll come to your office. No press, no games. She arrived in a beige trench, hair tied back, no makeup, no armor, no performance. I'm not here to apologize, she said, voice flat but not unkind. I just want to explain what I didn't know. I motioned to the chair across from my desk. Go on. She exhaled. I knew Fallon resented your caution, said you were stuck in the past, too loyal to legacy clients. But I didn't know she forged your signature. I didn't know about Thorn. I thought... She faltered. I thought you walked away. Did it ever occur to you, I said softly, that if I walked it was because they pushed me out? She finally looked at me then, not with pride, not with distance, just recognition, like someone who realized they'd backed the wrong horse and didn't know how to ride away. I wanted to believe the version that hurt less, she whispered. I nodded. We all do. She stood to leave, then paused. They'll fall. I know you're making sure of it. I'm not the one making them fall, I replied. They built their kingdom on a lie. I'm just the one turning on the lights. A week later, the Carter Ellison board held a private emergency session. I wasn't there, but word traveled fast. Their largest client had pulled out. 2 more deals were suddenly frozen, and someone, probably someone fed up, had leaked the Monterey ethics report to the San Francisco Chronicle. By Monday, Fallon resigned to focus on personal matters. Victor Langley disappeared into a silent leave of absence. The empire was crumbling. But the moment that stayed with me came somewhere quieter, unexpected. That Sunday, I met my kids at Dolores Park. A faded picnic blanket, overpriced smoothies, frisbees cutting across the gray sky. It should have felt ordinary. It didn't. My daughter Wren leaned against my arm and looked up at me. You seem different, she said. Lighter, I offered. She shook her head. No, like we're finally seeing all of you. Not just the dad who worked. My son, Theo, added, you used to build for everyone else. Now you're building for you. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because that right there was closure. Not lawsuits, not headlines, not public disgrace. Just the simple truth spoken by the people who mattered most. I had survived. And I had rebuilt. Brick by quiet brick. Then came the courtroom. The verdict echoed in my ears as I stepped out into the cool morning air. Fallon Dana Hale had just been sentenced. 18 months. Federal prison. Restitution. Mandatory counseling. She didn't cry. Didn't look back at me. But when the gavel fell, I caught at the flicker of collapse behind her carefully composed face. And no, I didn't feel triumph. I felt stillness. Like a final door had closed behind us. And there wasn't another hallway to walk through, even if we wanted to. Celestine had vanished weeks earlier. Word was she'd fled to a wellness retreat in Sedona, hiding behind crystal baths and emotional resets. She abandoned Fallon the same way she'd attached herself to her, fast, self-serving, and without a hint of loyalty. I didn't bother chasing either of them. Their exits were their legacy. But Victor Hay was still around. We spoke briefly after the sentencing. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled when he handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo. A boy him age 9, standing in front of my atrium design for Carter Ellison, grinning like the world had finally noticed him. "I've known who you were for years," he said. "I just didn't want to believe Fallon could do that to her own brother." He paused, looked at me. "I want to start again. Intern. At your firm. I want to earn it." I stared at him. "Fine," I said. "On one condition, you finish school first. Architecture doesn't need more wounded motives. It needs curiosity, precision, patience." He nodded. This time, I believed him. Back at the office, everything was quiet. No threats, no politics, no rot humming beneath the floorboards. My team had grown not just in number, but in purpose. They stayed through the worst storm I've ever weathered. Not because of me, but because we were building something real again. And this time, it was ours. Projects, trust, legacy. The Thorn Technologies campus had officially broken ground the previous month, and every time I visited, I walked its perimeter alone, boots crunching over gravel, breathing in that raw metallic scent of steel and potential. Each visit reminded me of the day Dana first called it burnout, the day I walked out of Carter Langley with nothing but my keys and the last piece of dignity they hadn't stolen. This new place, the clean symmetry, the glass spine that ran the height of the main building, the native gardens flanking its entrance, wasn't just architecture. It was a quiet rebuttal. But healing, that's not something you draft. It's not etched in CAD files or poured in concrete. Healing is human, messy, uneven, and it shows up when you least expect it. 3 weeks after Dana's sentencing, I found myself outside the old conservatory by the pier, a place we used to wander through together in college, back when she wore overalls and carried paints in her backpack. I hadn't stepped foot inside in over 15 years. Something pulled me in. Maybe closure, maybe nostalgia dressed as curiosity. Inside, the same humidity clung to my skin. Ferns curled around glass beams. Orchids bloomed in soft defiance. I wandered through the West Wing and stopped cold. There, in quiet detail, was the Muralar mural. I'd sketched it during a high school field trip. Dana painted beside me, our initials still etched in the corner in gold paint, MH+DH. I stood in front of it, fingers ghosting over the signature, and for the first time in months, I let myself remember that we were once kids with talent, ambition, and no plan for betrayal. That night, I called my father. We hadn't spoken since everything went public. He'd sent a card after the verdict. No return address, just 3 words. You were right. But hearing his voice older, raspier than I remembered, bridged something no court document could. We talked, really talked, about legacy, about silence, about the damage we do when we protect image over truth. "I should have stopped her," he said. "When you told me something felt wrong, I should have listened." I didn't let him carry all the blame. I told him about the night I almost burned the Carter Langley blueprints, how close I'd come to letting bitterness swallow the parts of me that mattered. He went quiet. Then finally, "You didn't burn them. That's what matters." We met for lunch a week later. Quiet diner. No confrontations. No apologies. Just 2 men relearning how to speak without decades of pride standing between them. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Then there was Julian. He showed up at my new office on a rainy morning, soaked through, breathless, like a man finally chasing his own integrity. "I left," he said. "Carter Langley's hollow now. No soul left in the firm. I miss real design. I miss purpose." "I don't expect a job," he added quickly. "Just wanted to say you were right." I handed him a towel, poured 2 coffees. We sat for nearly an hour. He didn't ask for anything, just left with the umbrella I handed him at the door. Funny how closure never looks, how you imagine it. A month later, I guest lectured at the San Francisco School of Design, my first time teaching in years. It felt less like performance, more like returning something sacred. They were young, hungry, wide-eyed, challenging. One kid raised his hand. What do you do when someone takes everything you built and slaps their name on it? I paused, then answered, you build again, but this time, you build so well no one dares question whose name belongs on the door. They clapped. I didn't need it. That wasn't why I was there. I was looking for something else. That click. That moment where the chaos quiets and clarity shows up. I found it, somewhere between their questions and my story. That night, I drove home slow. Rain glazed the city like a dream. Reflections smeared in puddles like old memories. I thought about what I'd lost. Years, trust, illusions, and what I'd gained: clarity, purpose, a new kind of peace, one that didn't need applause. I unlocked my apartment, walked into the quiet, stood by the window, watched the lights blink across the bay. I thought of Sarah, of the people who had stood beside me when everything fell me team. My father, even Arch, in his own way. Fallon was gone now, her name stripped from every contract, every plaque. The firm we once stamped with both our initials now bore only mine. Simple, unapologetic. But that wasn't the real victory. The victory was that I didn't become them. I stood. I rebuilt. I told the truth even when it hurt. And tonight, as Seattle tucked itself beneath a sheet of coastal fog, I whispered a promise to myself, the only one that still mattered. Never again. Some stories don't end with a standing ovation. They end in silence. The kind that settles after a storm when the wind's calm and you can finally see what survived and what didn't. Betrayal never comes from strangers. It comes from the people we hand our stories to, the ones we think will protect them. When that trust breaks, it doesn't just hurt, it remakes us. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in thousands of quiet decisions, to choose grace over revenge, clarity over chaos, truth over image. There's a rare kind of power in that. Not the kind that roars. The kind that builds slow, steady, permanent. Sometimes, the point isn't to prove anyone wrong. It's to prove to yourself that you were always right to trust your gut. That dignity isn't weakness. That rebuilding without noise is its own brand of justice. Justice doesn't always arrive in courtrooms. Sometimes it arrives as a phone that no longer rings with threats. A space that finally breathes. A truth no one can erase. The world may never applaud what you survived, but you will know. And that knowing, that is your peace. Revenge might feel good, but building something unshakable, that's real victory. Because, in the end, it's not about how far you fall. It's about how you rise stronger, smarter, wiser, unapologetically whole. That's your legacy now. Thanks for watching and walking through this story with me. If it spoke to you, leave a comment. Let us know what stayed with you most. And if you haven't yet subscribed, turn on notifications and join us for more true stories of truth, grit, and quiet strength. Until next time, stay grounded, stay strong, and never forget, the truth always finds its way.